Hello, it's Love Teaching from Pass Test Fast. I would like to cover how to write up an offer. I wanted to go over a case of a buyer who is financed. When you're working with that buyer and you are just about ready to write an offer on this property, what I'd like to do is go through the steps, and then if you have questions, you certainly can send us an email at service@passtestfast.com. I wanted to give you the basics, so we're going to go through it real quick. I'll kind of do what I would do if this was my buyer. So what we've got here on the screen is the MLS, and I'm looking at this property. I'm acting as if I'm going to write this as a buyer's agent. First thing I want to do is just double check my broker remarks, because the broker remarks is a place where the brokers will have written something about the property, such as 24 hours requested showing instructions. And also they would have indicated whether they opened a preliminary title with whatever company, and whatever person, and there is a title number, and it does say offers are due on which date. So I want to make sure that I get my offer submitted. We are having people that are submitting earlier than the offer review dates. There is no rule around that. If you have a buyer and they say please submit my offer, then we want to make sure we go ahead and do that. So today we're going to go through the steps of writing an offer for a financed buyer. So the next thing I would do is go into the supplements right here and look and see what supplements the listing agent has uploaded for me to use. And as I can see here, we have the legal description, the Form 17, the FIRPTA, the utility information or homeowner's information. So I want to make sure that I gather that information either when I make the phone call to the listing agent or when I am writing the offer. So I provide enough contingencies or enough information to my buyer to help them make a good decision. Once I've done that, I'm going to want to make sure I set up an appointment with my buyer just to kind of go over how they want their offer presented. So one of the things I like to do is utilize this buyer disclosure. It's very much a seller's market in our industry anywhere we serve in Washington. We're finding that we are up against multiple offers with the lack of inventory. So I want to make sure I properly advise my buyers that they are entering a seller's market and that they understand what the contingencies are. Some people are new. They're the first-time buyers and they are entering into a very competitive marketplace. So this is if you have no contingency or you waive a contingency. What are the risks that would be included? And so it kind of walks them through 1, 2, 3. If we waive this is, what could happen? So financing contingencies are described, appraisal contingencies, inspection contingencies. I want to be able to ask my buyer questions about their comfort level in waiving the financing or waiving the appraisal or having an inspection contingency or a septic contingency or a title contingency. All of these things are very important in protecting the buyer's earnest money. And as you can see, without the contingencies, there are some problems or some issues that the buyer may want to consider before moving forward. So this is an example of some contingencies. Cash offers have no contingent funds. We're not in that category with this example. Offer price with an escalation addendum, we're not going to be using that as an example. We're going to advise that we do a high earnest money amount, not have it non-refundable, but we are going to, in this scenario, go ahead and consider that we've done a pre-inspection for a first-time buyer. We've spent some money. We had an inspector go out there and do the pre-inspection between when we're writing the offer and when we are going ahead and writing and presenting the offer, when we have to present. So we would have had to have got the seller's permission to enter the property with our inspector. There is a written 35P that has to be signed by both the seller and the buyer to allow for that to happen. And in this scenario, we're going to go ahead and write it up knowing that we've done our pre-inspection. We know what we're buying. As far as a lease back to the seller, in this scenario, it's not necessary, because the house is vacant, so we're going to go with the scenario of a pre-inspection with an earnest money. That's pretty healthy, and then we will go forward and write the deal. So we're going to keep in mind that we do have a finance contingency. I'm going to go through that. And as far as an inspection contingency, we have done a pre-inspection. So we have some protection there and know what we're buying. Okay, the next thing I would do is, we'll go right back to the MLS, and there is a link to the transaction desk right here. Transaction desk. Click on the transaction desk link and then it will open up. It takes about a minute. And what it will do is get us prepared to write the offer. While it's doing that, I'll go over kind of the basics of the new forms in the sense that you have a quick view. Select forms that have been selected by Lakeside Company. And what I've done is to make it easier for you. I've collected that and made it easy for you, instead of having to select each form that you really want to use. I've kind of given you the basics, and then you'll want to go ahead and select which ones you want to use, based on the scenario that you are involved in. So you do want to use a template that will upload all of those quick select forms that I've selected for you. And in this instance we are representing the buyer, so we are in a sales situation. We're not a listing. If you end up selecting one of these other ones by accident, you'll have to go back and start over. But we're going to go ahead with the residential sale, and we're going to keep the wizard. Sometimes I use the wizard and sometimes I don't. But it's fine to have that box checked. Click Create, and it's going to go right into the Quick Select section of the forms with the logo and with the information that we have pre-selected. However, it's going to take a bit of knowledge for you to know which ones you want to select. So it takes about another minute as it goes ahead and uploads the information here of the property. As I'm using the wizard, I'm just using these next and previous. So I'm going to click Next. And the purchase and the sale date, that is today's date. The offer expiration date, because they're reviewing on the 15th, I'm going to go ahead and use the 15th as the offer expiration date. I should have had a conversation with the listing agent just to make sure that we would be able to get a response on our offer by the 15th. If you know they don't have any other offers, I might be able to sneak in before the review date. But most of the time we're going to need to allow enough time for our offer to be reviewed on these other dates. We're going to go ahead and fill those in as we fill in the form, so we go to Next. And I'm going to want to add a client. Create a new transaction contact, and let's just pretend that I'm going to have Mary as my buyer, and I'm going to just put her name in here. And then I'm going to put her email address. This is how it will auto-pull. And then if I wanted the address, that's where I can put the address of her current residence into the system. Some of you guys don't fill this in, which is kind of challenging, because it doesn't fill on the forms. And we'll go ahead and just type that in like that. And there we go, and then we'll click Save. Oh, this says the field is required, so I want to select a buyer, and we will save her into our system. So now she's a buyer and she'll be ready to sign the next step to go to the forms. As you can see, I loaded all the forms for you. However, you're going to want to think about what forms you're going to need. And there is some strategy around that, so I'm looking through. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got my purchase and sale agreement. I've got my financing addendum, which is what I want to use. I'm not going to use the evidence of funds, that's for a cash buyer. I always want the optional clauses. Right there, and then I have some choices. I want the 35, or do I want the 35W? Because I've done a pre-inspection, I don't need the 35. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. And we're going to use the 35W. You want to have the FERPTA form. In case the seller has not included the FERPTA disclosure, I'm going to go ahead and put that into the mix. Just so that the seller can acknowledge we can trigger that. Form 22J. It was not built prior to 1978, so I don't need this form. I can come over here and delete it, and that will make it easy. So that makes it easy. The 22T, if the order has been done, I'm going to want to have it. I have received the preliminary title. If I've seen the preliminary title and sent that to my buyer for review, I don't need the title contingency. Because if there's concerns on that, I will have addressed that before presenting my offer on the 15th. So I can delete the 22T, only if they have ordered the preliminary title, which they have. And I have delivered the title as well as the disclosures to my buyer. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate that one from the mix. We're not going to use an escalation. My clients are not willing to go up way high on this deal. So I'm going to just go ahead and eliminate that one. I don't need the contingency notice. Okay, so I'm going to remove that. And I don't need the 35R, so I can remove that one. But as I'm looking here, I'm thinking, okay, how can I make my offer stronger? And one of the ideas that we have seen that have worked really well with. Maybe you don't have as much down payment and you're really trying to show strength. Maybe I go 5,000 or 10,000 above the asking price. But I want to show strength in knowing that I have the ability to come up with additional down payment if the appraisal does not come in at the value. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add right here. And I'm going to include the Form 22AD. And when I do that, it allows me to just add some more information into our contract and strengthen my offer. In this example, I'm going to only put 20% down. I'm already going to cover my closing costs, so I'm not going to ask the seller to pay my closing costs. But I want to have enough money in my reserves to be able to come in case the appraisal does not come in at the value. We are seeing some instances in this area where the appraiser is not able to value at, say, the escalated or the increased price. And so we want to show the seller that we do have the ability to come in with additional down, so that is the 22 AD increased down payment for a low appraisal. So after I've selected my forms, I'm going to click Next when you look at these documents. If the seller provided you with their inspection report, you're going to probably want their signature on this. Again, these are things you may use or may not use. There's a disclosure receipt. So if you've given disclosures, you want to make sure that you've received their acknowledgement that they have received the disclosures. That receipt you can pull down right from this section. If you need a buyer agency agreement, you need to establish an agency. That would be a great document. So again, not all of these documents would you use. However, in this example, we do want to make sure that we have used the advisory and the supplement right here. As far as making sure we grab the legal description. You need a legal description right here. Okay, so I'm done. I'm going to click. I'm going to go back 1/2 a step right here, because we do need to fill in the forms. So I'm going to go ahead quickly and fill out the Form 21 and show you how I do that. And then we will bundle it really quick. And then we will wrap up this video. MLS sheet. I do actually keep my MLS sheet readily available, so I can kind of come back here and look to see what appliances are included or what type of water source or public utilities are connected. I have access to that just by clicking over, so I can quickly go through and check that I know that these items are available and they are being listed on the listing. Anything else you would want to put others, like say, for example, the garage door opener. Just to make sure that we get the garage door opener. Then we'll put that in there. And then the price we're going to, let's see, I'm thinking, what are they listed at? 2.7. They're going to get multiple offers, so we're going to go 2.705. And hope that we get it that's as high as my client can go. Especially, because they need to come in with additional down. And I told you we're going to go with pretty healthy earnest money, just to show we're serious. Because we're putting 3% or 5% down so that earnest money can be the same thing as the down payment. So I'm going to go ahead. We have that readily available. And we're going to just go ahead and put in $10,000, so it's going to be pretty healthy. We're going to select a wire transfer. Most of the deals that we're seeing come through are using wires. I mean, there is a wiring fee your client would have to pay for. But since it's $10,000, it's right in their bank account, a wire is good. Then we're going to say we're going to deliver it within 5 days after mutual acceptance. Always check the closing agent. Always check the forfeiture. I'm like, oh, I can't remember what title company. We can come back here. Preliminary was open with First American. I can just kind of quickly grab that. I type in First American title and escrow right here. There we go, and then the First American title and escrow here. And then I can type in. I always fill in this section closing date. Possession date is on closing. It's vacant, so we can easily do the closing date on the 15th. We have financing, so we have to give the lender enough time and enough runway to do the loan. So we're going to go ahead and indicate 30 days, which is going to put it right there. I mean, if it's the 15th when they review, they probably want to go like the 15th on Friday. And the last day of the month is not good. Fridays are tough too, just because of closing and recording. Sometimes they get backed up. So you've got to kind of walk your client through that process. And then as far as here, we check the boxes, since we don't know on the FERPTA. We didn't see that as a disclosure, we leave those boxes unchecked. We represent the buyer, the seller represents the listing broker. And then I indicate what forms we are using here. So I do a drop-down menu and I'm just adding the addenda of the forms that we need to use. So we're going to go with the 22D and the 22K and the 35W. And you can see 35W, I'm not finding it here. So if you don't find the form that you need on the drop-down, which in this case, I don't see, we just can type it right in here. If we are there, we go there. So now I have all of the forms that I need to complete the purchase and sale. As you can see, it auto-filled me as the buyer's agent and it auto-filled the seller. And so what we've got here is fully filled out. I can click on this quick select right here, it will go to the next form that I need to fill out. So 22A, I'm going to go ahead and fill this out really quick. And as I do that, you're going to want to ask your client some questions. What kind of loan? You should have already known this. You hopefully have talked to that lender. You're going to want to select what type of loan. if they're getting a conventional or they're getting FHA. You are held to a high standard here to make sure you're asking the questions and communicating with that lender. The lender is not a party to the contract. You are a party to the contract as you're creating it for that buyer. So make sure you've asked the lender the questions. And we're going to put 20% down. Because it's conventional, there are some lower conventional down programs. But then they require down payment assistance. My client has 20%. They've been approved for the loan and they have already talked with the lender. They're very sure that they're going to want to go with that lender. I call this clause the shopping clause, because it allows the buyer to shop with different lenders. Since we know we're going with the lender that has been working really hard with this client, we're going to go ahead and just put in a 5 days period. The next thing I want to do is select, do I want to go with the seller's notice to perform, where the seller actually has to give us notice to waive our financing contingency? Or do I want to automatically waive my financing contingency after a period of time? Then I go ahead and go to the next one. And I selected the 22 ad. Make some changes. Save and exit. To save time, we don't show some actions we did in this video, then I go ahead and go to the next one. And I selected the 35W and the 22K. Those forms already come pre-filled out. You would need to go back and indicate utilities. But we don't want to waive. We did the pre-inspections, we want to check the number 2 and then if there were some modifications maybe. For example, we wanted to have the carbon monoxide detectors installed. And then we save. Okay, so then we're done with the forms. Signing and bundling the forms up into a signing. So I click on signings right here on the right. Click add and then I'm just going to label it 23,405 Mary. Usually you know Mary's offer. Something so you can easily find it. I'm just going to say test just because I want to make sure I can delete this after I get done with this video. Once I'm done with that, it's going to simulsign. Ask me to select simulsign again if I'm working with multiple buyers. I'm going to want to know how to use the simulsign participants I check. I indicate who it needs to sign this document. In this case I don't have any 22J so I don't need myself. But I do want to indicate Mary is signing. Click add and then I want to go ahead and select the documents that I want her to sign. So I can go ahead and select 21, 22D, 22K, the 35W, the 22AD. I want all of these agreements and I do want the legal description. So I've got all of the forms that I need to make this signing work. Certainly I can, depending on the situation, I might have to use some of these. But at this point, I'm just going to go with the forms I need to create this offer and get this submitted. So it takes about another 30 seconds to compile all of that information that I've entered into each form. If I forgot to fill out one of these forms, you can certainly save this and go back. But you're going to want to delete the form, and then go back and actually fill it in. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. But I can move things around here. Certainly I can add my pre-approval letter into the package. I can do a lot with this. I would just click Add Documents and put that Form 17 at the very end. That way I can slice off the disclosures as I need to. So I want to keep the legal description. Some people move the legal description up. That's fine. I actually kind of like that because legal description is part of the contract. And then I can move things around. Maybe I want to have the 35W. The optional clauses should go next. It's up to you to decide which layout you want. I may see a lot of offers that come through and you want some sort of organized, systematic way of how it needs to look. Once I get done with selecting my documents that I will design right here and it's going to allow me to drag and drop. If there is a foreign document, meaning there's something that I uploaded or a document that we have as a firm that we put into the documents, we will need to drag and drop initials and signatures. As you can see, it automatically fills in on the MLS forms. But we will need to go in and actually indicate on like the legal description that's a foreign document. Meaning we upload that or that's unique or a document. I will need to grab an initial and I will want to have her date that, so that's how that's done. I forgot to do the checkbox. There are some checkboxes so you can drag those over. And I will just go ahead. I don't need the place cleaned. We're fine with the way it looks so we're not going to check that box. But it is on public water and public sewer so we want to make sure that we have that as part of the contract. And it is on natural gas. So we'll go ahead and put those things into the system. There is an HOA, and on this particular property some properties have a homeowners association. In this case I'm going to assume, and I never want to assume anything with real estate. But I want to make sure that I not only have ever received the preliminary title commitment from the seller or the listing agent she said she ordered it, but I also want to click on the link and make sure that my client has reviewed the CC and RS or the homeowners association. Because I don't want to make that a contingency. That's another contingency or a way that you could protect a buyer's earnest money. For example, if my buyer wanted to do a daycare out of that house, that may not be feasible, or she wants to paint the house purple, that also may not be feasible. So if there are things that your buyer is concerned about, you want to make sure you address those at this time. I'm going to go ahead and say home warranty, and I'm going to do a nice thing, which some of you probably need to do. Especially if you are waiving or you're doing kind of the inspections. The inspection waiver's already filled out. You can see that it's initiated and everything is initiated here. So I'm ready to, on this one I'm going to leave the form in. But I'm going to let the seller come back and check whether they are a foreign citizen or not. If they are, then I will have to fill out. I have my buyer talk with a CPA, talk with their financial advisor, and indicate whether they want to check which box to check. And then there are some things we have to supply to escrow, so we only have to fill out this bottom section, if the seller indicates they are a non-resident alien. Once I'm done I click next. And it's going to ask me if I want to send a little email or customize. In this case the buyer knows it's coming. We talked about it at a Zoom meeting earlier, so we clicked send. And it's done. So that's it for creating an offer with a finance buyer with 20% down with a healthy earnest money and using the 22 AD. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to our managing brokers or to your mentor so that we can assist you with your offer creation. Good luck out there, and we'll talk to you guys soon.